Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are tuned to the Nighttime Podcast, focused on the fringe of Canada.
Hello listeners. I should probably start this episode with a content warning. If you're especially affected by stories of sexual harassment, stalking, and, well, creeps, this episode may not be for you. I'll spare the lengthy introduction for this episode, as it's going to be pretty obvious what's coming as we get started, but basically, I put a call out to you, the listeners, asking for your stories about encounters with real-life creeps. Based on the responses I've received, they are everywhere, and it doesn't take much to capture their unwanted attention. But seeing as you share this world with me, you probably already know that, but if not, buckle up, because I'm about to prove it to you. In this episode, I'll share some cautionary tales submitted by nighttime listeners who had the unfortunate experience of encountering real-life creeps. And to help me out along the way and provide some opinion from the opposite end of the gender spectrum, I've invited my good friend Kristi Lee from the Canadian True Crime Podcast to suffer through these stories with us. So let's get to it. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, we're going to hear about encounters with creeps. Kristi Lee, I'm assuming you've had lots of creep experiences, but before I ask you about yours, let's just do a quick introduction. You are Kristi Lee, the host of the Canadian True Crime Podcast. Elaborate on that a bit.
Oh, geez, you really caught me off guard with this. So I have a podcast and I talk about Canadian true crime, and I have a strange accent because I originally come from Australia, but I've been living here for 12 years. I've lost count now. I promise I'm a real Canadian, even though, I do have that strange accent. But yeah,
I hate that you have to explain that every time. And I see you
so
often that comes up. It's such a pain in the butt.
I got another bad review the other day. Sorry, I can't with the accent. Someone in America. And I'm just like, it doesn't upset me anymore, but it's like, what kind of person that listens to the way someone talks and immediately leaves their creation a 1-star review? Can't do it. I don't know. When do you stop explaining it?
Not after 12 years. Well, after you've been doing podcasting you've been like 5 or 6 years now, probably?
Yeah, I think it'll be 5 years in January. Wow. Yeah, well, it is January, so yeah.
Let me ask you this, as a segue into your stories of creepdom that I'm sure you've had, do you often get like hit on or like kind of weird sort of messages from people who listen to your podcast?
Actually, no.
Really?
I got one weird message the first year, and it was somebody in Etobicoke, like a suburb of Toronto, and they didn't message me. They messaged another one of my other friends, Lainey from True Crime Fan Club, who's in the US, and they said, "Hey, can you pass on a message to Kristi? If she's single, I would like to meet her." I'm like, why didn't you just message me yourself?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, we had a good old chuckle about it, Lainey and I and the other girls. And but yeah, nothing since. So and I'm very happy about that. I've told people that I'm married, and I just don't have any time. Like being on Facebook, which I aren't that much anymore, but you have your usual Facebook creeps, but they target everyone, podcaster or not.
Or not, yeah. I've heard from people. I'll tell you kind of what I did, but it seems like even if you're a woman selling like a dress on Facebook Marketplace, it's like that's enough to get lunatics and creeps coming out of the woodwork. And it seems like what I ended up doing was I did a story call out. I made like a post on my Facebook being like, and on Twitter and Instagram saying, if you've had an encounter with a creep, be it, a date gone wrong, a weird customer at your place of business, a cat caller who went way over the line, let me know and I'd like to hear about it. And pretty much everyone I heard from would start it with like something like me, like every other woman have had a million, and here's my standout one. But it seems like, I think as a guy, I think it's a lot more common than I would have expected. Like I know there's creeps and weirdos and people who will way overstep comfort boundaries with other people, but I didn't think it was as as frequent, and I didn't think it was something that would have happened to every single person a million times. Like, have you in your life, oh, even outside of podcasting, like, have you had a lot of encounters with real bad creeps?
Yeah, oh yeah. Um, there's that one that I told you about. Maybe I'll tell you later. I don't know. It's a real downer, but like the stories that I could tell about me too.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between small T trauma and capital T trauma, and I don't
Hmm.
consider it to be capital T trauma.
Hmm.
So
You put it well. There's stories of creeps with a capital T, with trauma with a capital T, and trauma with a lowercase t. These are all lowercase t, but they're very close to the line,
yeah.
and they really give a glimpse of kind of the world that's out there. And I'm going to start right off the bat with one short clip that I'm going to play you, and it's the clip that really started my idea for this episode. I saw going around Facebook was in Nova Scotia, not far from where I live, a young woman had an uncomfortable encounter with a creep at a Value Village. I don't know if you have Value Village in
Oh
Ontario.
yeah, I
Okay.
love Value Village.
I do too. I go constantly.
I just browse the aisles.
Yeah, I do the same, and I go and look at the books. I can look at the books forever, but my kids are like, "Don't buy any more books. You never read them." And I'm like, I have to explain collecting to them constantly. It's like the toys I buy you that you don't play with. Let
Oh
me buy a
yeah,
$2 book.
exactly. It's okay for them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this young woman, she was browsing clothing at Value Village, not far from Halifax, when a man approached her, and I think he was kind of like, she must have expected it was coming. He was probably following her or something, because she actually shot a video of this guy approaching her, and he doesn't realize she's shooting it. She has her phone kind of in her hand in a way to conceal it, but the audio really tells a picture of
Oh
what
my
she went
God.
through. So listen to this. Oops.
Excuse me. My name's Lori.
All right.
I just think you're one of the most beautiful girls I've ever met.
Oh, thank you.
Can I buy one of those things for you?
Oh, no, it's okay. I'll be fine.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you engaged with someone or involved with someone?
No, I'm not, but
I'm not either.
I'm only 17, so.
Okay, well, that's a good age to be.
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
not quite that.
All right.
I got injured about a month or so ago. My knee is kind of, I'll show you. It's kind of banged up. I get bitten by a tick, actually. Maybe you can guess which one is bad.
Oh, I have no idea.
You can't
No,
tell?
I can't tell.
It's the right one. Anyway, I live out in the country, and I got a bunch of stuff that I was kind of trying to keep up on for work, but it's kind of falling behind. I'm looking for someone to help me.
Oh, okay.
It's a paying thing, but it's basically involves getting my stuff out of the garden and processing some things like tomatoes and that kind of stuff.
Right. I'm getting a phone call. I actually have to go.
Okay.
Wow.
And she's only, like she says in the clip, I'm 17. I saw her photo from the, like, because that video that she put it up online, it was getting circulated all over. I saw her photo and she looks younger than 17, and the man easily looks 40 or 50.
Yeah, I mean, when it first started, my first thought was, this is nothing like every woman has experienced this. Some random guy, yeah, that reminds me of another creep story. But I'll tell you that one in a second too. But when she says she's 17, I'm like, okay, that is beyond. Yeah, it's a good age to be. Yeah, maybe for you, buddy. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, that didn't even slow him down. It's almost like he tried to think like, how do I deal with that? It's a good age to be. I'm not quite there yet. It's like, this guy was 17 in the 80s. And you can't really hear, like, you probably couldn't hear the clip well. There's this weird sound at the beginning. She's just kind of sliding the dresses or whatever it was, like scratch, and you see him in the video, he kind of looks down the aisle and sees her and then walks down like he was trying to find her. And the video tells a different story, and then as you hear, she just ends it with, well, he tries to hire her to do gardening in the country, which is just horrifying. It sounds like Dahmer or something. Not Dahmer, Ted Bundy. That's like something Ted Bundy would do. Like, I'm injured. I need, help. Then she's randomly like, oh, my phone's ringing. And the video ends. Apparently, I read her Facebook post. She provided a few updates, and it sounds like she reported it to the police. They found out who this guy was, and he's now banned from this particular the mini
Value
mall
Village.
that owns the value, or that has the Value Village in it. I don't think he's allowed at that mall or the Value Village anymore. But
Oh, well, that's it. That'll put an end to his behavior for sure.
yeah, but what do you do with someone like that? Because it's like
Yeah.
he's not doing anything illegal, but we all know what's going on.
Yeah, and if he drops like a big number of lines, someone is eventually going to pick it up, Or are they really, if it's in person? I guess it's a bit different to if they do it online.
Yeah,
He's real bold.
Yeah. Oh, he's certainly bold. Can I buy one of those? How creepy. And like the whole thing, when randomly he's like, I got an injury here on my knee. Can you guess which one it is? He says, I got bit by a tick. Like, just what a bizarre thing. Like, it's so strange. But what I see is if someone is that comfortable approaching someone in a store that's 17 and says they're 17.
Yeah.
Like, what about when they when they do something like that to someone who has like an intellectual disability or someone who's struggling in some way and is vulnerable? Like, that's kind of where it gets really scary. This young woman had her wits about her enough to, get out of there. And, so it ends up being a cautionary tale, but it's like a lot of like trauma with a capital T can very well start with, a story like that isn't handled appropriately, I guess.
100%. And like, all he has to do is keep trying it. And eventually, like you said, someone who is in a vulnerable position is going to be flattered or something, going to take the bait. And who knows what will happen. That's really scary.
Yeah. I got, I'm going to jump right into the next one.
Okay.
This one is I specifically in my call out said, maybe you tried to sell something online, or maybe it was a customer at your work that bothered you or was creepy. This listener, her name's Maya, she wrote to me about two different situations involving her work. I broke them up as two separate stories, so we'll talk about them separately, but here's the first. So Maya, I got your email and you were generous enough to give me some of your time. Your story seems to be one of the type that involves an inappropriate experience at work. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I was 17. I was about to turn 18, and I was working. It was like I had just finished my first year of university and gone back to my hometown, which is Hope, BC. Basically, like small town, 5,000 people.
How long ago was this?
So I'm 24 now, and this would have been summer 2015. And basically, I got a job working at as a server at like a Chinese buffet restaurant, and there were a lot of regulars there. So people who would come in like sometimes 2 or 3 times a week to eat at the buffet. So there's a lot of people who I got to know quite well.
Like a Chinese buffet has the reputation of being almost like the restaurant equivalent of like a bingo hall or something as far as class. I'm like, was this that kind of Chinese buffet?
Yes, that's exactly the kind of Chinese buffet for sure. Yeah, small town Chinese buffet. It's definitely a vibe.
A vibe.
So this one guy in particular, I don't know if I should use his name or not, but
let's not. He probably doesn't listen to my podcast. I don't think I don't think it's popular among the Chinese buffet enthusiasts in rural BC. I don't expect. So tell me about this guy.
Yeah, so he would come in twice a week, always on my shifts, and basically just every time I had to go to his table for something, he would want to stop and chat for 5 minutes, and mostly just like didn't really mind it, but it was definitely, there were some signs that he was like too enthused about this relationship. Like I took a couple of days off one time, and one of them was one of the days that he regularly would come in, and the other person who worked there, who was my manager, was like, he was like asking about you. Like he said that he came in just to see you, and he was wondering where you were, and he wanted me to tell you. And I was like, oh my God, thank God that Rachel gets it and she isn't.
Yeah. just to get a sense, so you were 17 at the time. How old is, like, are we talking like a 60-year-old man?
I would guess he was between like 60 and 70, probably. And at one point, he had mentioned, so there's this attraction called Hell's Gate, like about an hour or so out of town, that's sort of like a touristy historic site kind of place. And he had mentioned going there, and I'd said, oh, I haven't been there in years. That's a really nice place to go, whatever. And basically, like a week later, he came in and he had, I don't know, like he had bought it for me, I guess, a season's pass to that historic site, and was like, hey, like, I got this for you. I don't mind if you go with someone else, but like, I'd really love to take you there sometime. Maybe before work one day we can go. And I was like, yeah, no. But of course, like, how do you deal with things like that when it's someone who comes into the restaurant where you work all the time and you know that you're probably going to see him again? And so eventually it got to be the point where I was about to go back to Victoria for university. And I had mentioned that to him because I think he was asking me, you know, like, I think that was really just what it was, is he was asking me, could he take me to this place sometime? And I said, well, probably not, because I'm going to be moving back to Victoria soon. And he was like, you know, I'd love to take you there. I'd pay for the ferry. Like, I'd love to move you back into your dorms. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think probably my parents are going to be driving me. And he was like, well, like, give it some thought. And so he wanted to know when I was moving, and because he would come in multiple times a week. And so he was really pressing on, like, I'd really love to take you back to university. And I was like, I don't even think I like lied to him about when I wasn't going to be working there anymore, because I just figured, you know, it's not my problem. One time away from this business. And like 2 days after I moved back, I remember I was hanging out with my friends in one of my friends' apartments, and I get a call, and I was like, it's like my manager from the restaurant that I just stopped working at is calling me, Rachel. And like, can I guess I'll just take this. And I was so confused as to why she was calling me. And she was like, hey, Maya, this guy is at the restaurant right now. He's sitting outside on the curb bawling. And I was like, what? And she was like, he has a ring, he has flowers, he is pissed drunk. And this was like 4:30 p.m. or something too.
Oh, and you had already moved to Victoria at this point?
I had already moved to Victoria, yeah. And he had come in with all of this like accoutrement and was planning to propose to me. And I guess he'd gotten really, really drunk to work up the nerve to do it. And my manager was just like, I don't know what to do. I told him he moved already, and he started crying. Went and sat on the steps outside.
Wow. So that
was sort of the last I ever heard from him.
That is a bizarre situation. Did you ever go back to that employer? Like, when you're back home, do you ever work there afterwards? Like, I would think it would even be uncomfortable to even go back in the restaurant.
No, I'm just trying to think. I don't actually know if I have been back in the restaurant, because I never moved back home for the summer again. And I was diagnosed with celiac disease. So just a good excuse not to go back, I guess.
And so you've never seen this guy? Would you, like, I guess you probably don't want to run into him.
I definitely wouldn't want to run into him. I would definitely recognize him.
It reminds, like, as you were describing kind of the relationship you had, it reminds me a lot of when you go into, I'll use Tim Hortons, but a lot of like coffee shops, you'll see like an older guy who feels like it's okay to kind of like be flirty and weird with the staff. You see it all the time. This sounds like a story where that is just spun way out of control and just like turned into obsession. But luckily you dodged any, who knows what would have happened. It would have at least been a really awkward situation that you just missed by days.
Yeah, I was so glad that I wasn't there for it.
That's something,
eh? Wow.
Yeah, that's and again, it's a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
With an old man, there's a trend.
you're right though. You're like, that sounded like something that went way beyond what the usual was. But yeah, before she got up to the proposal and all that, I was like nodding along because, you know, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I worked service jobs. You know, I worked at a couple of grocery stores and a McDonald's for 3 years, and the amount of customers that would hit on you and that would like find out when you were working and would come in and wait for you. And like, it's all just kind of, and every time, like both clips that you've played, it's reminded me of yet another creep experience. Like, it's crazy. Like another creep from before about, the previous clip that reminded me of it. I was at the corner of King and Young in Toronto, like leaving work after a long day, walking to the GO station, and I'm crossing the road, and then all of a sudden this guy comes up next to me and he goes, "Hi, you look like a really attractive girl, and I'm trying a new thing now where I just tell you and ask, like, is there any chance that you might be single and that, you know, we might go on a date. I don't want to be creepy or anything. I just want to buy you a nice drink. You know, it's like, it's so hard to meet people these days." And I'm just like, I'm trying to walk over the freaking road. Like it was so awkward, like crossing the road with this guy. And we got to the other side, and in my mind, I'm like, is this guy creepy or just like a hopeless romantic or what? And then, you know, because they gaslight you and they put on this really like friendly and jovial kind of persona, so that it's like the opposite of creepy. But it's like what they're doing to you, like accosting you literally in the middle of the street, is like not okay.
Yeah, and the whole thing, like what I said to her about that, like the Tim Hortons kind of flirty guy. You see that so often. I've always found it uncomfortable. I think it's. I've often thought maybe it's just like lonely people, but to me, what it comes across as is people trying to turn things into like a really like softcore strip club or something, where it's like, and they take advantage of people in a position that have to be nice to them too. So actually, just the other day, I was in the gas station. Yesterday, I went to this gas station seeing if they had fireworks for sale, because last night was New Year's Eve. And as I walked in, there was this guy in lineup in front of me, and there was two clerks, both were female. And when it got his turn to order or to like pay for his gas, he wasn't. He was just waiting in line he must be a regular. He's like, "Wendy, Diane, just wanted to wish you both Happy New Year. What do you got going on tonight? A big party?" You know, this sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, like, is this, unless he's related to them in some way, like this is way inappropriate. And you could kind of see both of them, you know, were reacting like, "Oh God, I got to do this for 5 minutes." You know, but anyway, this situation, I think this girl, Maya, she's just lucky she wasn't there when, as a 17-year-old, if a drunk man comes in with flowers in a ring, like that would be traumatizing. Yeah, as an adult, I would have no idea what to do other than, I guess, like take out my phone and start filming it. I would immediately go live on Instagram, just so I feel like I have backup. And with her, as we're talking and we finished that, we were like in the process of saying goodbye. I was thanking her for her time, and then she's like, "You know what? I just thought of this other story." And it's from like that same summer of her working that job. It's only short, but this one is a little raunchier.
So actually, just as we were talking, this reminded me of a different creep situation that actually happened the same summer. So basically, I was working as like a housekeeper at a hotel, and then I would go to work at this Chinese restaurant as soon as I finished work, basically. So this also, I guess, was when I was 17. There was this guy who was staying at the hotel, and I think he was like in town for some sort of logging project or something. I know he was kind of like the boss because he made it very clear to me that he was the boss.
I already know exactly the kind of guy you're talking about.
And so this one's a little bit grosser, actually. So he would kind of like, so he would get home from work when we were still cleaning rooms. So like, 1, 2, 3 p.m., something like that. And he would always sort of like seek me out wherever I was to like chit chat and be a bit flirty, because it was a really small hotel, so it would not have been hard to figure out where I was at any given time.
Yeah.
But basically, as soon as he started flirting with me, he started very obviously, how do I put this, jerking off into a hand cloth and leaving it in a really obvious spot.
Into a what?
Like a washcloth.
Oh.
Yeah. Because like we know people do that at home. Like as a housekeeper, it's not that uncommon to find something like that, but like every day, like on your nightstand.
Okay, so you kind of got it, like the context of it kind of like if it was a message, it came through pretty clear, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry you had to deal. That's disturbing.
It's okay. Just sweep it quickly into the laundry basket and try to forget about it.
Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate it. As uncomfortable as it is, I appreciate you sharing those stories. That's a bit more disturbing.
Wow. Well, I guess I should probably lead in with that other story that I told you that I was like, oh, is this that kind of creep story? But yeah, just to be really quick about it, me and my little sister, we were at a bus stop after school. There was like early dismissal or something one day, and we're at a bus stop, and I was about 16. She would have been about 13. And all of a sudden, at the end of the seat, there was an old man that we didn't really notice, but he had what we call in Australia like stubby shorts, which are like really short shorts, kind of the short shorts that a workman wears, like a tradesman. And
a tradesman? Wait, why?
Yeah, because in Australia it's super duper hot, right?
Okay, because I'm thinking of like the like YMCA, that song.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't one of them like have really short shorts and like a workman?
Yeah.
Maybe that's an Australian thing.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, I'm just sitting there. Next thing I see this weird like shaking of a hand. I look out, he's like stuck his thing out one of the legs of these short shorts, and he's,
Yeah, I know.
stroking the monkey or whatever you say. And it's funny because we're laughing while we talk about it, but this is freaking disgusting.
Oh
for
yeah.
this old man to be doing this next to two young, it's not like we were 17 and 19, 13 and 16.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's straight up illegal though. Like that would
yeah,
be
oh yeah,
like assault, sexual, or I don't know if it'd be sexual assault, but it would be criminal.
I don't know what it was, but I don't think we told our parents. We didn't report it. I don't know why. It was just like one of those, oh, I can't believe that happened, like nervous giggle type things. And when you look back on it, you're like, man, that was like really something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That reminds me of sort of reminds me of one of the other stories that were sent to me. This was a voice memo I got. Some people, I didn't do interviews. They just sent me a recording.
Okay.
Listen to this.
Hi, Jordan. My name is Liz. My story goes back to when I was 18 and I was working but staying at a friend's house. She called me at work to ask what time I was off and what time my bus was, actually. And when I got off the bus, her and my other best friend were waiting for me at the bus stop. They proceeded to tell me that there was one of her customers that her coffee shop she worked at. He was stalking her. He was actually a deaf gentleman. And when we crossed the street, there was the woods. I looked and he was actually in the woods, buck naked, watching us. So me, being the firecracker I am, decided to chase him into the woods, yelling. Not that he could hear me because he was deaf, so that was a dumb move. And what am I going to do when I catch a naked, creepy man? Anyway, the cops were called. He was apprehended. He had been following us for a while, apparently, the three of us, because we were pretty much inseparable.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. I would say if you see like a naked man in the woods, whether or not he's been following you, I just would not suggest chasing them.
Yeah, excuse the French, but that took some balls.
Oh, God. I'm going to go right into another voice memo. This is another one that was sent to me. That's a short story of a creep through a work setting.
So I used to work for a major bank. I did customer service, basic banking stuff. So I had one dedicated supervisor and for my little team, and he was very helpful and loved to answer questions and had chats, very friendly, talked about our kids, that kind of thing. Told me about his wife and, raising babies and working, and just very into talking about the whole thing. He eventually added me on Facebook. We started talking. Next thing I know, he was sending pictures of his junk and giving me very detailed messages about what he wanted to do and how he was just going to drive up, and whether I liked it or not, he was going to put me in my place. Sent me videos of him stripping. I reported it to the bank. I was let go. He's still working there. Good times.
Oh.
Yeah. How common is that kind of story, though?
Well, with me, not common, because I have never had anybody send me a dick pic.
Do not send that into the ether.
I know. I said that once before, and a friend of mine said, I'm going to rectify that, and she sent me a picture of Richard Nixon. that was it. But
well,
I don't ever want to be the recipient of one of those pictures. But yeah, in the workplace, that it's common. It's common.
Yeah, and then and that's nowadays. Imagine, I often think about what people must have dealt with in the workplace in like the 50s and 60s when things were so different. Like now, whether or not it's as it should be, but companies, at least there's like legal ramifications and stuff of not, paying attention to people who are being victimized and stuff. Back in the day, it wasn't that way, and the culture was just different. And I can't imagine the stories people would have had back then, women working in offices surrounded by like the boys club of assholes who are drinking in their office and, these sorts of things.
I can definitely imagine. I started working in an office in the year 2000, and I don't know what office culture here in Canada was like back then, but in Australia, it was like when we had a Christmas party or a Melbourne Cup party, which is the big horse race that happens every year. It's awful. I hate it. Whenever they have a party, the company would put on unlimited alcohol for everyone. And then we would all just get blind, rotten drunk. People would be vomiting in the gardens. Like the managers would all be hitting on everybody, pinching butts. It was like, and then on Monday, everyone would just go to work and act like nothing happened,
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into it with my job, but there was a situation. So far, we've been talking a lot about men who are harassing women and being overly forward with women. I think everybody who works a job that has Christmas parties, there'll always be a story of someone who took it way too far at a Christmas party, especially if alcohol is involved. My one story of that involved a woman who drank too much, and this is such a bizarre story. What they were doing is they would take their shirt and lift it up and put it over people's heads to kind of trap them in her shirt.
Oh my God.
And she would and she was hammered, and she was surprising people doing that. And it seemed like the people she was choosing to do it with would be the people if you knew all the people at this party or this event, they would be at the bottom of the list of people with a sense of humor or people who could take it or something. And then a lot of them also were a bit, higher up to the point that you wouldn't even curse around them, let alone, put your shirt over their heads. But needless to say, she never stepped foot in the office again. I think the next morning she's probably oh shit, I'm not going back there. This was years ago at a prior employer who I'll save them from naming them. But anyway, that's my only story like that. But
Nuts.
we're going to go out with these. The two that I have left are both a bit longer, but they're very similar. And close to very dark. I'll start by, one is set in Saskatchewan, I believe, and one is Nova Scotia. I'll start with the one in Nova Scotia. So we don't need to get too personal, but tell me a bit about yourself.
So I'm an almost 40-year-old female now. So when this story happened, I was already a relatively mature female. And I'm a working professional in a small town that, it's a pretty sweet little life down here. Yeah.
But not short of some encounters with creeps, as your email told me. And what's shocking, when I got your email, you referenced a case that was in the news in Nova Scotia. Right away, I knew all the details. I remember following the story. So let's back up before we get into what made it in the news. Tell me how you came to be in the same room as this creep, so to speak.
So I met this creep over Plenty of Fish. So picture it. It was 2011. It was before dating apps were happening. So I said I was already a premature woman. And so Plenty of Fish, you still logged onto the website. I believe like the instant message chat feature was gone by that point.
Okay.
I wasn't brand new to it, but I was new to rural Nova Scotia where I'd moved to, and I moved to as a single person and like, hey, let's go out there and date. But I was still very shy about saying that I was doing online dating. Like it still was somewhat prejudged. So I met this wonderful guy over Plenty of Fish.
Do you remember crossing paths with this guy on Plenty of Fish? Do you remember what connected you?
I can't I think he messaged me first. I can't really remember. But one of the key things that first stood out as sort of my first kind of red flag, like we would just exchange an email here or there. I think it was only a week or two. But my laptop at the time, the Wi-Fi basically broke on it. And I would have to plug in with my Ethernet port. And I complained about that. And he's like, well, I know a lot about computers. I can just come over to your house and fix it. And I was like, slow down. No, like I'm fine. I'm actually, I deserve to buy a whole new laptop. Like I'm ready for it. Don't worry about it. And then we kept, I think there was at least 2 or 3 times in messages between then and when we met where he kept going, well, I can come over to your house. So like there was this really big, like, I want into your house. And I was like, no.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we agreed for a very public meeting. So it was end of November, and there was like the Christmas parade in town. So I said, let's meet at the Christmas parade. I believe he physically lived about 45 minutes away from where I lived at that time. So we agreed for a place in the corner, where to meet, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I get there, like, typical 15 minutes early. He's not showing up. We'd exchanged cell phone numbers so we could text in case we couldn't find each other. And I'm stuck behind slow traffic on the highway, this, that, and the other thing. And he basically showed up when there was like 5 minutes of the parade left over. Okay. And so he's like, hey, and I remember this crystal clear. I turned and I looked at him, and in his pictures on Plenty of Fish, he was okay. He was average looking. You've seen the news article. He looks very crazy in the news article. Okay. He did not look that unwell in person, but I got like my whole body, the alarms went off for like, this is not a good situation. And I was just like, what? I'm like, I was trying to convince myself not to listen to my gut. So he's driven about 45 minutes. He was late, parade's over, and we're right in front of a tavern. And so he's like, let's go in for a drink. And so we got our glass of wine. And I think I said something like, tell me about your family. And he said, well, my father died like 2 years ago. And I went, oh, I'm really sorry for your loss. And he went, well, don't be. You don't have to be. And the guy sat back and I went, well, what else am I supposed to say? And I'm like, are you going to chide people for, you shared something upsetting? And then I felt like I said what was appropriate back. And I could not get my body to settle down. Like my hands were trembling. I could barely drink my glass of wine. And I just remember like, I chugged it. It was a glass of red wine. And I was like, gulp, gulp, gulp. And then I was like, hey, do you know what? I gotta go. I'm not feeling well. I'm just gonna go pay for my glass of wine. He's like, no. He's like, I'll pay for it. He went, how about I walk you home? And I'm like, nope, that's good. And so he went to get the bill and I like booked it. Very much not fit, very overweight at the time, don't run. And I ran. And I got home to my apartment And like, just, I locked the doors, I closed all the curtains, and like, I dropped down onto the ground. And I was just sort of panting on the ground. And I was like, oh my Jesus Christ. And I'm like, why was that so scary? And I was really, really thrown off by that.
Mhm.
And then he sent me a text message that went, hey, I could have walked you home because I already know where you live. And so I said, how do you know where I live? He went, well, it's a small town. You said where you worked. I asked some of your colleagues. I know this person and this person at your workplace.
Mm.
Ooh, that was a really big invasion of my privacy, regardless of him being a creep, right?
Mhm. And what's interesting is at this point he hasn't done anything like outwardly awful or
Nope.
creepy, but your reaction is so visceral. Like your intuition is good, obviously.
Well, and I feel like there's a lesson on the intuition from this too, right? And so when the guy said to him, like, I felt like I sent him a stern text back, and I said, well, that feels like an invasion of my privacy. I really didn't feel like we had much chemistry. You know, I don't want to waste your time. Goodbye, good luck, all of that. And he doesn't say anything. And then around midnight, he sends me a text, like something along the lines of like, hey, how come I haven't heard from you? Have I said something weird? And I was like, okay, I don't think he's in touch with reality. And so I just ignored it. So I went silent. 8 a.m. and it started. And I remember waking up, my phone, like, I swear he had to spend all night just creating draft text. My phone was just like bing, 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 bing from 8 a.m. till 10 a.m. Like, I was having a hard time even getting a text out to anyone. And you don't mind if I use like harsh language? Like,
Say it. Yeah,
I
go
said
for
it in the emails. One of the big ones was, you fat fucking cunt. Just like every other woman, using a guy to pay for your dates, da da da. And it was just calling me down to the lowest. Like, I remember there was some remark about, like, you know, you wearing your glitter makeup, it's like putting makeup on a pig. And I was just like, okay, you aren't right. There's no point in me saying anything back. Like, I know that you're trying to bait me, you're trying to get me to say something back. So that was that. So by 10 o'clock, nothing happened. This was a Saturday morning. I didn't leave my house. I didn't open my curtains, nothing for the entire weekend. Go to work on Monday. Everything's fine. Absolutely fine. I didn't say anything about it. New here. I didn't want people to judge me. So I was doing some like oppressing myself internally. So that was fine. And then what was it, like February-ish? I know it was winter of 2012. And this story makes the news. Okay. And so I'm down in southwestern Nova Scotia. And it was like outside of like Weymouth, like in Digby County, that this SUV goes off the road. And it turns out he had kidnapped a woman and her mother, like the driver of it had kidnapped a woman and her mother. They got loose in the vehicle, stabbed him in the neck with like a pen or something. He crashed the vehicle. He got out of the vehicle, went into the woods. Police found him from the blood trail. So, wow, this was a really riveting story. They said his name wasn't registering it at all. Then I think 2 weeks later, when he entered his plea in court, they shared his picture, and it was the creep I had gone on a date with. And I don't think I have felt my body sink so fast as that when I was sitting at my desk going, oh my God. That is the bullet I dodged.
Wow, and it's a serious one because it's not only was he arrested and charged, he's now labeled a dangerous offender, which gives an indefinite sentence. I'll just read a section of the article.
Yeah.
This is from CBC. It says, a man who admitted to abducting a woman and her daughter from their Wedgeport, Nova Scotia home in 2012 has been declared a dangerous offender. As a result of the dangerous offender designation, Gordon Nickerson will be locked up indefinitely. Gordon Frank Nickerson, who is from Yarmouth County and in his mid-30s, admitted to kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman and her mother during a terrifying ride from Wedgeport to New Minas. The women managed to escape after they seized the chance to attack Nickerson.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the story. When she emailed me, I knew right away because this case of the guy that she described, it was a big story where it was like, I don't know if there was a chase involved. Like, it was like he was being chased at one point and had them kidnapped, and they were looking for these people. And I don't know if this is true, but the rumor I heard was that one of them found like a pen like under the seat from the back seat, and they got him with the pen while he was driving. So he went off the road and they managed to escape after he put the vehicle off the road. But she ended up, we talked a bit more because she ended up, the police contacted her, or she contacted the police maybe, and she had to go like kind of testify when they were trying to label him a dangerous offender. They found all these people in his past that he had been nasty to, and collectively all those stories led to the judge granting the dangerous offender label or however
Designation.
Yeah, but that's pretty wild. But she says it in there is like it's a good message about trusting your intuition. If you're with someone and it doesn't feel right, there's a reason your body does that.
Yeah, that really rang home for me too, because like a lot of the time we are told as kids not to trust our intuition, to trust the authoritative figures, whether it be our parents or our teachers, and it's like we have to almost reparent ourselves almost all over again once we're adults to like remind ourselves that our bodies do like have a second sense and can alert us to danger if we just need to lean in and trust it. So
and a lot of times it's the people in authority that you got to worry about, because they're the ones that got the upper hand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here's the last one, and this one kind of it's a very similar story. Listen to this. Hello, listeners. Sorry to pull you out of the episode like this, but I want to take a moment and let you know about something I just posted to the premium feed. After recording this episode, Kristi and I recorded a separate conversation discussing our experiences with the year that was 2021. We talk about our mental health, COVID, time management, and of course the movies, music, TV shows, and podcasts that helped us get through it all. If you're interested in joining us, you can listen to our 2021 look back and all the other exclusives on the Nighttime Podcast premium feed. You can subscribe at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. Again, you can support the show and get much more of it at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. Now let's get back to the episode. So Megan, I got your email, and it seems like from the very beginning, your dating life was almost off to like a weird, creepy start. Because your email started with your first date, but then it goes on to something much later in life. So why don't you give me the story of, I guess, your first encounter with a creep turned out to be your first date?
All right. Well, yeah, when I was about 14, had a group of friends deciding to go to a movie, and the one friend said, well, I'm going to bring this boy, and I had met him maybe once or twice, and I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And she's like, well, maybe you guys can sit together, or maybe he'd like to get to know you too. And so, this is kind of a exciting thing for a 14-year-old. And so we all went to this movie, and I did end up seeing this guy and saying, we sat apart from everyone else. So it was kind of like a date, I guess, just the two of us watching the movie. And nothing real. I think he might have like held my hand briefly during the movie or something, was about the most of the excitement there. And then I thought, he was, a cute boy. He was nice. He was friendly. I can't remember if we had exchanged numbers or not. We probably did at that point. I'm not sure, but I don't think I ever actually got a hold of him again. And then his friend said, well, you know what? He doesn't like you after all. So very sad about this, of course, because it's, I thought was such a fun date, and being 14, thinking this might be the end of the world. Right. Yeah. And then, I think I was about 19. So maybe it's about 5 years later, there was quite a high profile murder here near where I live. A young eight-year-old girl was murdered in her home, and they, on the hunt, like trying to find what happened, details, everything. And a few days later, there was like a breaking news that it was this name of the boy I went to the movie with. Ooh. And was quickly arrested and quite quickly tried and found guilty, and I believe still in prison.
Wow. So you in your email, you say, like, I believe I dodged a bullet. That's pretty close to a scary person. So
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. When I met him, I would have said he was a normal 15-year-old kid, really, for what I knew. Who knows what could have happened to him, in those few years, what changed, what went strange or off or whatever. But
yeah, so this is your first date, and it kind of sets the scene for the later story you shared in your email. I don't know what the dating scene is like in Saskatchewan, but this date you describe later on in your life is just, to me, is just terrifying. I think you said it, like maybe it was in your early 20s when this happened.
Yeah, probably early mid-20s. And so a little bit before, this was actually not kind of before online dating was even a thing. So it was actually like real life meeting people.
Oh, when you just had to, like, a weirdo walk up to someone and be like,
in the olden days. But yeah, that was kind of a weird one too, for sure. I was out at a pub or bar with some friends, and this guy came to talk to me, chatted, seemed, all right. I was single at the time and exchanged phone numbers. Great, maybe go on a date sometime. And I think he called me maybe a few days later to go for a dinner. So I said, yeah, sure, I'm free. And where do you want to go? We picked a place, and she's like, well, I'll come pick you up at whatever time. And I was always a little bit on the cautious side anyway. So I was like, no, I'd rather just meet you. I'm like, I'm not sure, I might be out doing errands or whatever, or I'll just make sure I can meet you there. And so we picked a place and a time to meet. And I got there on time. We decided to meet at a lounge part of a restaurant. So
okay.
I noticed right away, I was like, okay, he just finished a drink and the waitress brought him another one. So I was like, he's been sitting here probably for a little bit. And this guy, he was a firefighter. So he worked as a firefighter in Saskatchewan here. And so I sat down, and the first thing he said to me was like, I brought you a present just for you today. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And anyway, the present was like a charity firefighter calendar that he was in. And he was like, here you go. I'm October. You'll never forget me now. And it's just it was just odd. Like, I mean, I don't know, such a cliche of like the firefighter, whatever, but okay. And then, the date just went on, I just knew I wasn't really feeling it. We really didn't have a lot in common, or things we talked about didn't really mesh well, or whatever you'd call it. And he asked if I wanted to go somewhere else for some drinks later after dinner. And I just said, well, I worked last night, or I'm kind of tired, have some stuff to do probably. So I'll just head home after this. And then, so he said, okay, well, I'm just going to run to the washroom. And then I was sitting there and I'm walking and waiting, and so I kind of called the waitress over and I was like, did you happen to see my friend that was sitting here? And she's like, well, maybe he went outside. Is he a smoker? Because I'm pretty sure I saw him leave. And I was like, no, I don't. Okay. And I was like, did the bill get paid? And she looks and she's like, oh, well, actually, he paid his half. Okay, I'll finish the rest of the half. And then she's like, looked at me all kind of sad, like, oh no, did something? And I was like, no, it's fine. It's not a problem. Here's I'll pay the bill and whatever.
For a tip, here's a calendar.
Yeah. That would have been funny, actually. And then so I just packed up and left, and I went out to my car, and I just sat in the car, closed the door, and I was getting ready to start it, and my cell phone rang. So it's like, oh, it picked up, and I answered, and I was like, oh, well, you finally realized I left. And so at that point I thought, oh, he knows I just left too. And I walked to my car. And so it kind of clicked that I'm like, I think he's watched and waited for me to walk out.
Ooh.
And at that point I realized I have no idea what kind of car he drives. So I don't know where he could possibly be in this parking lot or anything. And so I just said, it just isn't appropriate or something. I said, just please don't call me again. And so then I was driving around, and then the phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And I thought, well, I don't want to go home yet, because not that it would probably be hard for him to figure out where I lived anyway, but I thought I'm just not going to go home right now. decided to go over to a friend's house, called a friend and went over to her house. And this whole time is just phoning and leaving messages. But the messages ranged from like swearing at me to like crying and saying that like he fell in love at first sight with me and please forgive him, to I don't know if he just continued to drink the whole evening. It sounded like in a very intoxicated messages. And eventually, you know, I kind of said, you can't call me anymore. I would, you know, either look at a restraining order or whatever. I'm like, you just can't call me. I'll go to the police if you keep harassing me. And yeah, that was kind of the end of it. I remembered actually, I did get one call from him maybe a few weeks later. And he called and again, kind of this like crying, like, I'm so sorry for what I did. And now I have to tell you that my ex-girlfriend is pregnant and we're going to have a baby. And I'm so sorry that things won't work out between you and me now. And I just said, best of luck. Goodbye. And didn't think much about it again. I didn't ever hear from him again. And then me and a friend got talking about that evening one time. We're like, oh, do you remember that weird guy? And I said, I wonder where he is now. Maybe I can find him, like see if he's on Facebook or whatever. And we just kind of Googled his name, and there was like lots of reports of him, like death threats with a girlfriend, and it was the mother of his child, it said too.
Oh
so
my God.
This, you know, would have been around the same time if he had a baby not long after, I guess. And yeah, death threats and stalking charges, and I believe lost his job. And yeah, and I just thought, oh yeah, that was a weird first date. Very weird.
Both of those situations are crazy, but that's scary. The idea of him calling as you left, like there would be no way that he would know other than if he was just sitting out there, like maybe taking enjoyment from seeing you walk away, you know, with him having left you like that. I don't. Yeah,
that's what I figured. I was like, he definitely must have watched me walk out to realize at that moment I had left. So it was a weird feeling, definitely. So.
Wow. But despite these two encounters with creeps, you ended up safe. So
I gotta have to say, out of, you know, those being definitely weird, odd dating stories, the rest, you know, there's still good people out there for sure. So, but.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, this is it's another story of someone whose intuition is telling them something's not right in this person. Yep. Get out of it and protect yourself. And she managed to turn, like, what could have been, like, all of these could turn into a nasty story.
Yeah.
But her trusting her intuition and protecting herself makes it a story that we can kind of giggle a little bit about and roll our eyes at. But again, it's very close to being trauma with a capital T.
Yeah, totally. I can't believe you got so many messages, although I can.
Well, so many people have said that to me. They're just like, I, like every woman on the planet, have, you know, this sort of thing. And it is, like, for me, it was eye-opening at how many people wrote to me and how similar the stories were. And then also how, as I'm reading the stories, I could just think of, like, things that I've witnessed happening. Like, for example, the person who's flirting with the young lady working at Tim Hortons, and there's just no reason to be that friendly with someone who serves you coffee for minimum wage. And it's just like, it's kind of taking these interactions you often see, and everybody has walked by someone catcalling or something, and you're just like, oh, you prick. But it's just, there are situations where it's taken much further, but it's all kind of part of the same beast. So I think of, like, what do people need to do to stop it? And all I can think of is really, like, people just need to be respectful of other people and not impose your BS on them. And the other thing is, people need to trust their intuition and look out for yourself, because there's no way around it. There's a bunch of weirdos out there. Yeah,
and like, if you have boys, like, make sure you tell them about, you know, what consent looks like and what creepy behavior looks like. You know, we're responsible for raising the next generation of boys to not be little turds who do stuff like that. Although, you know, all of a sudden you're not going to erase creeps, because there are so many dodgy parents that probably shouldn't have kids. And, you know, if they parented better, then maybe they wouldn't have these creeps. But then again, it goes back to the nature versus nurture thing. So just basically ignore everything I just said.
Well, I think you need to be like offensive with it in terms of like raise your kid to understand what consent looks like and
Yeah.
respect women or men or whatever. But then you also need to be defensive and teach your kids to
Yeah.
trust their intuition, look out for themselves, travel in groups, don't walk home and through a dark
Yeah.
neighborhood from a bar, so you kind of got to cover both bases
Yeah.
because it's like you want to not add to the fire by not setting your kids into the world correctly, but then you also want to protect your kids from the fire that's burning regardless.
Exactly. And I've got a boy and a girl, so it's good times for me, at least
Yeah.
you only have to know about the one approach.
Oh, well, yeah,
I'm
it's a
kidding.
complicated world.
I know,
So I'm teaching
I
you
know.
both. But anyway, Kristi, I appreciate you talking through this with me.
Thank you so much. It's been fun, kind of.
Yeah, it's been gross and fun.
Gross and fun, yeah.
Before I end this, I want to be clear about something. Kristi and I kept this light, and we certainly had some laughs along the way, but sexual harassment and stalking is not at all funny. If you're a victim, notify local law enforcement, as it doesn't always work out the way it has in these stories. Our guests were all fortunate to have come out of these experiences largely unscathed. And I plan to do another episode like this in the future, so anyone out there who had a creep encounter you want to share, please let me know. I have my contact information in the episode summary. And with that, I'll end this episode of Nighttime, but before we part, let me send some thanks to those who make this show possible. A huge thanks to everyone who contributed to this episode. It was a pleasure and an honor to meet you and to have your trust in me to share your stories. Also, a big thank you to my partner in crime podcasting, Kristi Lee. If you aren't already listening to her show, Canadian True Crime, you're missing out. And a huge thanks to Monty Datta, who contributes the music to this show. It's a piece called Noir Tokyo. And lastly, a massive thank you to everyone who listens to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. But with that said, keeping the show alive is and has always been an uphill battle. So if you want to help take a bit of weight off the show's back, please subscribe to the premium feed. Not only does it make the show possible, it'll give you more of each topic than you'll find here on the free feed, as I'm adding exclusive content regularly. For about the price of a cup of coffee, you can keep the show alive at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And with that said, let me thank the newest supporters of the show. Annie, Greg, Keith, and Carl, thank you for going premium. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can help by simply sharing this episode on social media and letting like-minded friends know what we're doing here. If you have any story ideas or want to give feedback on the episodes, you can reach me at nighttimepodcast.com/contact, or you can find me on social media. I use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and of course, I'm often live on the Nighttime Podcast YouTube channel. So until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte. Copyright Jordan Bonaparte.